This is the third Sunday of our series on the Beatitudes, and so we'll do our Second Testament reading as a responsive reading printed in your bulletin. This is Matthew 5, verses 1 through 12. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. The word of the Lord. Everyone loves an underdog story. One of my favorites is in the movie Knives Out. A wealthy author dies unexpectedly, and a private investigator is sent to find out who killed him. A large inheritance is at stake, making each family member a suspect. You quickly learn that each suspect is awful in their own way. The only likable suspect in the cast is Marta. Marta was the author's meek, unassuming caretaker. She's a kind woman, so kind she can't lie without throwing up, and the family treats her horribly. Halfway through the movie, an executor reads the author's will, and the author's entire estate, his house, his publishing company, and $60 million goes to Marta. The family is furious. But after helping find and catch the true culprit, Marta keeps the estate. The movie ends with her looking down at the family from a balcony, drinking from a mug that says, "My house, my rules, my coffee." When Marta receives the inheritance, it's easy to celebrate because every other candidate is a terrible person. Oftentimes we like when those who are kind or down to earth get recognized for it. It's not overly clear, though, how we would gain the world by being meek ourselves. In our world, confidence and bold actions produce results. Meekness turns a cheek to unfair treatment, promoting the status quo and even perpetuating future mistreatment. It seems a strange thing for Jesus to highlight, especially for those who try to make their faith visible. Frankly, if meekness as we understand it today makes one a recipient of God's inheritance, I'm not sure I'm in the right profession. I mean, preaching in front of you today, in front of cameras that will broadcast this sermon on our church's YouTube channel, doesn't feel all that meek. And yet the global church values the sermons of Jesus and generations of preachers after him. So I find myself asking God, which one is it? Are we to let our little lights shine or hide them under a bushel? Are we to resist sin and evil or let it have its way until your return? Does the Holy Spirit help us grow out of a meek faith or grow into it? At first glance, the story of the burning bush seems like proof that God makes the meek bold. Moses may have taken his sandals off once the bush started burning, but God's call to action still leaves him shaking in his boots. Moses pulls out every excuse to weasel out of freeing the Israelites from slavery. He asks, "Why me? What if nobody believes that you called me? What about my speech impediment?" God promises every support. He even turns Moses' staff into a snake before him in case no one believes him. Moses is running out of excuses, so he throws a Hail Mary. "Please, Lord," he cries out, "send someone else." This first dialogue casts Moses as uncertain, scared, self-doubting. We remember the time that Moses murdered an Egyptian and responded by fleeing the scene. Moses seems meek, and God seems to be mad at him for it. God decides to pair Moses with Aaron and tells him to head to the Israelites anyway. Moses isn't getting out of this one. But like always, God does what God promises. Moses courageously stands up to the Pharaoh, leads Israel out of slavery, and by chapter 33, God says he is very pleased with him. So, what else is there to get? Moses was meek, but God made him strong, right? So why then, in Numbers 12, does Moses still refer to himself as more meek than anyone on the face of the earth? Side note, kind of hilarious that he refers to himself as the most meek. In Hebrew, the word for meek, anav, carries the weight of the word lowly. Think of someone with their head bowed to the ground, hands outstretched, palms facing the sky, seeking whatever help they can get. This lowliness could come from physical poverty, it could come from spiritual poverty. In either case, it carries an idea of dependence on others. The opposite of this meekness is not boldness, it's self-assuredness, or reliance on one's own capabilities above all else. One becomes meek when they can humble themselves before others and ask for help. This transforms how we understand Moses' story. Now he grows in two different ways. Moses is becoming more confident and more bold, but he's also becoming more meek towards God, more reliant on God's help. When Moses' questions end with that final exclamation, "Please, Lord, send someone else," he actually lacks Hebraic meekness because he's assured himself that he can't do what God asks. Throughout the story, God proves to Moses time and time again that Moses can rely on him. And so eventually Moses' leadership strategy changes. He starts bringing every problem up to God, asking for help with arms outstretched. Questions designed to move Moses away from the problem become prayers that God will help Moses move towards the problem. Israel's story becomes one of learning to rely on God like Moses, through hunger pangs, despair, and the temptation to seek other gods. Moses isn't perfect, but more or less he stays meek, while Israel continually looks to anyone else for help, anything else for help beyond God. So as hilarious as it is for Moses to call himself the most meek person ever, his story proves exactly that. The Greek word for meek, praus, adds to this image of faithful meekness. It conjures an image of strength under control. One source likens it to a wild animal that's been trained. Without this kind of meekness, a horse might run wild and directionless, recklessly brandishing its strength. The meek horse is still powerful, but also gentle, and its strength is focused on supporting its rider. If you're a part of a Lenten small group, you might remember the Lord of the Rings example in this week's reading. The one ring to rule them all contains this terrible power. It needs to be destroyed. Anyone who holds it is tempted to keep it for themselves. Who better for a couple of hobbits, meek, already content with life, not needing or seeking that power to be the ones to destroy it? Who better to receive the inheritance of the earth than someone who doesn't want the job? So when Jesus says, "Blessed are the meek," we might hear him saying, "Blessed are those with self-control," or "Blessed are those who depend on God more than themselves," or "Blessed are those who are gentle when being rough is more appealing." What this beatitude doesn't say is, "Blessed are the powerless," because Jesus already blessed them. When Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor," he's blessing those who struggle under a weight placed on their shoulders. When Jesus says, "Blessed are those who mourn," he's blessing those who can't avoid their sorrow, be it from death or the impact of sin. When Jesus says, "Blessed are the meek," He's blessing those who try to rely on God for help, knowing that God keeps God's promises. Jesus has blessed difficult, out-of-control circumstances, and now he turns to those who try to bring those circumstances to God, palms facing the sky. This beatitude also doesn't say, blessed are the submissive, or blessed are the passive. As I mentioned before, at their worst, these can perpetuate oppression. In the face of corrupt leadership, silence only supports the ongoing recklessness. Of course, if the goal is to lower the level of chaos, a reckless response isn't much better. Blessed meekness doesn't celebrate a lack of power, but encourages its well-timed, well-controlled use to set the captive free. Of course, if we're being honest, we like the chaos sometimes. After all, boisterous people often set the table for the best stories. This week, I learned the story of Staff Sergeant Reckless, a horse who carried over 5 tons of supplies during the Korean War. Without a care in the world, he'd stick his head into the soldiers' tents, eating scrambled eggs and even a stack of poker chips. Now, I looked everywhere and I couldn't find any similar stories about a horse named Meek or Mild. But maybe that's the point. Remember how Jesus' meekness kept him safe during his ministry? He'd repeatedly ask people to say nothing about his visits, allowing him to slip past his opponents. If the meek are the ones to inherit the earth, then our ultimate goal is not boisterous chaos, but anonymous righteousness. Knowing that we can rely on God, we find that we don't need to be the person who takes up the most space in the room, because God is there as well. We stop asking what we can do and start asking what God may be trying to do through us. Being meek is not for the faint of heart, especially when the reckless and the boisterous garner the most attention. It's hard to rely on God when we treat faith like something we have to fix ourselves rather than relying on God to help it grow. But have hope, friends, because as Lou preached last week, the Beatitudes aren't full imperatives. While we might treat them like commands, they carry a more indicative weight, a sense of inevitability that regardless of what our world looks like right now, these blessings will come to pass. God does what God promises through Moses and through us. If we read these blessings like we were at an award show and the awards were separate chunks of the world, all of the winners would be the underdogs, the meek who our world ignores but who God watches closely. We'd expect the best actor's performance to be a great liar, someone able to convince us of anything. And the world goes to someone like Marta, who can't lie without getting sick. We'd expect a modern-day Pharaoh swimming in riches and powerful enough to do whatever they want to be named the best director. And the world goes to Moses, to all meek leaders who seek freedom for their oppressed neighbors. We'd expect the Best Stunts Award to go to someone who puts their life at risk, attempting something wildly dangerous on display for the world to see. And the world goes to the anonymous righteous ones, to those who don't need an audience to use their God-given power well. We'd expect the same tired victors who seem to win every year to take another victory lap. And the world goes to God, the one we can rely on to create a new heaven and earth. Thanks be to God.